like to call to order the Charter Township of Oxford Planning Commission regular meeting for Thursday, August 23rd, 2018. We please all rise and pay your respects to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We please note the roll call. Mr. Spiz is excused. We're going to move to item 4, approval of the agenda.
I move to accept the agenda as written.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Rosner, seconded by Mr. Curtis. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Item 5, approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the Planning Commission regular meeting minutes for August 9th, 2018.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Knoll. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Item 6, public comments on items not scheduled for public hearing or items that are not on this agenda. Is there anyone in the public wishing to speak on items that are not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to commissioners' comments. Mr. Curtis.
I have none.
Mr. Knoll.
No comment.
Berger.
No comment.
Mr. Hunwick.
No comment.
Mr. Rosner.
I just had a question, where the new Leo's is going in, the sign is still up. Is that going to be taken down? I don't remember that in the site plan. That's going to be taken down, right, the sign that's there?
Yes, I had a meeting with the developers of that property to discuss the nonconformance of that sign.
Yeah.
They are aware of that.
Okay.
And they brought drawings to our meeting, which were not in compliance, and so they will be resubmitting drawings at some point. That was a while ago that we had that
I
meeting.
kept seeing the
so-
demolition, and I kept saying, okay, it's going to go down, and it's going to go down,
Yeah.
and they're working around it, and I thought,
It's grossly out of compliance.
Yeah.
It's not even close. So they're aware of that, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to item number 8, public hearings. The purpose of this hearing is to receive public comments on a proposed special land use for a convalescent nursing home, subject to Section 5.14 of Ordinance 67A. The location, portion of the nursing home will be centered on parcel number P0435-300-0115, located on the west side of South Lapeer Road, south of Manitou Lane, and north of Iroquois Drive within the Township of Oxford, Michigan, in the R2 Single Family Residential Zoning District. Is the petitioner here?
Yes.
If he is, can you come up to the lectern, state your name, and give us an introduction as to what you're proposing to do on that parcel?
Yes, good evening. Jim Butler, PEA. I'm the development consultant for the project.
I'm David Fulkerson, the managing partner.
I have some graphics. I don't know how you want me to display them towards you, display them towards the audience. I do have 11 by 17s of the same I can share with you, if it makes it easier.
Okay.
It's no additional information, it's just information that's colorized. And
Okay.
So I will hand those out.
Thank you.
While I'm doing that, David can give you an overview of what Grace is.
My name's David Fulkerson. Grew up in Oxford on Drainer Road. My mom and dad are still there. I don't know if any of you have ever eaten at the Country Coney, but my father bought the old American Legion Hall and started the Country Coney there in 1980. I hope you enjoy it. It's where I cut my teeth washing dishes when I was 12 years old, and I short order to cook making conies for the community. So I've been around a long time, and the reason we started this and wanted to build one of these facilities, which we're new to this, is I lived with my mother when she was taking care of my grandfather. And after about 5 years, it was just too much for her to handle. And I'll never forget the day that we had to move him out of our house on Drainer Road into the now McLaren Nursing Home in downtown Lake Orion. My father was there, 6'3", 225-pound Marine, myself, my mom, and my grandfather. And when we were taking him out of he had a stroke, so he couldn't speak. And when we were taking him to the nursing home that day, we have a banister by our front door. And he grabbed a hold of that banister, and he was just holding on and shaking. And my father had to pry his fingers one at a time off that banister because he didn't want to go. And it was one of the worst days of my life. And then he just stopped eating eventually and passed away. But so I realize, and we realize, nobody wants to be in these buildings. But our goal is to make this facility the #1 community in the United States for assisted living. And we have a very deep bench that can help us make that happen. We have a Fortune 500 leadership consultant who is one of our partners, and he's one of the most enlightened souls I've ever met in my life. And he's going to be in charge of training our staff and teaching them and coaching them. We're going to treat our staff well. We're going to treat them how we want them to treat our residents. And we're going to pay them well. And we hope they want to stay, because turnover in caregivers is a big problem in these facilities. So we've looked at a lot of places, and we want this place to be different. And every resident, if and when we do this well, will feel loved, listened to, and understood. And our culture is going to be based on 4 key pillars. And the first one is respect and acceptance. Who is this person? What are their concerns? What are their worries? The second pillar is empathy. We know they don't want to be there, but we hope to convince them that they want to stay. Loneliness is a big issue in the elderly community, and if we do this well, we will improve their stay and their life's journey. The third is to be present. We're going to teach our residents and our leadership and I'm going to be the executive director, so I'm going to be there. So most of these facilities are corporate owned, with the headquarters in Kansas City or Atlanta. But our leadership and our owners will be in the building. And so we will have a very close we will have a grasp on what the culture is and make sure everyone is being loved and listened to and understood in our building. So we think we have a distinct advantage because of that. Our fourth pillar is emotional intelligence. We're going to connect with our residents emotionally, and we're going to listen to their stories, and we're going to make them hopefully enjoy their stay. Thank you for listening. I'm going to turn it over to Jim.
David, thank you. So, as you know, the property sits on 2 pieces of property, one being in Orion and one being in Oxford. It's approximately 9.1 acres. As a part of history, we have already received conditional rezoning approval from Orion Township. That was received on last Monday night. Yes. The Township Board voted to rezone the property conditionally to office professional, and for this use and this use only. We are scheduled to be in front of their Planning Commission on the 5th of September for site plan approval. The building contains 63 units. 16 of those units are memory care, and that's the portion that you see in Oxford Township. The balance, the 47 units, are assisted living. We have 46 parking spaces. There is a drive going around the full portion of the building for purposes of loading, unloading, and fire protection and life safety. We will be, as a part of this project, slightly reconfiguring Manitou Lane and improving it. Currently, it's about 20 to 22 feet wide. We will be enlarging it to 25 feet, improving drainage. Currently, it essentially just drains out into the road. So we will have a series of 2 detention basins. The site, if you've been out there, and I'm sure you have, sits up on a knoll, and we're going to be lowering that knoll and pushing that dirt out and flattening it out. If you look down the drawings, and I'm sure you have, you'll see some dark lines. There will be some retaining walls. So the building will still remain up, but we need to flatten out the grade. Stormwater will be handled. We'll be installing safety paths along the Lapeer Road frontage. That's really all I have to add. If you have any questions of me, I'll be more than happy to answer those. There is a letter that we would like to have read into the record.
I'm Clark Harris with Grace Senior Living Properties. I just have a letter that I apologize wasn't in the packet, but I can get copies to everybody after this meeting, and this is from Chris Barnett, Orient Township Supervisor, and he wrote to us, due to a previous commitment, I'm unable to attend tonight's meeting, but he wanted to express his assessment of the Conscious Senior Living Properties doing business as Grace Senior Living Development Project underway in our communities. On August 20th, 2018, the Orion Township Board of Trustees approved the conditional rezoning of the parcel of land purchased by Conscious Senior Living Properties in Orion Township, and this will allow the project to move forward to site plan approval for September 5th, 2018, with the Orion Township Planning Commission. Our Township Board unanimously approved the conditional rezoning and believe it to be a good use for this parcel. Our 2 communities are already working together on a mutually agreed upon water solution and look forward to the continuous municipal cooperation. From my perspective, this will be an excellent addition to both of our communities. I just appreciate that he wrote that, being that this is centered in 2 communities that has some uniqueness to it, and appreciate both municipalities working so well together on this. Thank you.
Okay, I'd look for a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Mr. Berger, second by Mr. Nold. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, the motion passes. The public hearing is open. We can hear public comments now at this time. If you're a member out in the public and you wish to speak on what's been presented, please come up to the lectern. You'll have 3 minutes to give us your information. So just come up to the lectern, give us your name, state your
I am
address.
Mr. Greiser. I live on 520 Manitou Lane for the past 18 years. That's the subdivision behind it. I urge the committee, before you give any approval, that you do something with a maintenance agreement on a road. For the past 18 years, specifically for the past 15 years, I maintain the road. Nobody wants to do anything. The people from the apartment don't want to do anything. We do get financial support from the church and then from the homeowners, which I belong to. This is the biggest problem, is to have a maintenance agreement in writing, inclusive the improvement which you may or not make. You should not approve anything unless the maintenance agreement from the road is being incorporated. This is my main concern, because if you look at Manitou Lane right now, I put at least 3 tons of black top with my own labor, because nobody wants to do anything. And I asked for the advice of Mr. Ferrari about 10 years ago, and he said he would help me, but nobody from the partners, the apartments or the homeowners, wanted to come to the table. We couldn't come to an agreement. So it was up to me and basically the homeowners from Manitou Lane. So that's my main concern. I also, about 25 feet wide, in my opinion, is really not wide enough. Right now, we have 24 feet. I'm also concerned about a sidewalk and lighting. That's all I have to say.
Anyone else? Come on up.
Hi, my name's Christina Greiser. I also live in the settlement in Manitou for 16 years. I just wanted to add, as a mother of 2 children, I had to drive my kids every day to school. Both are now in 10th grade and 12th grade because the bus stop was right on Lapeer Road and Manitou Lane, which was way too dangerous, especially for small children that need to walk home and there's no sidewalk, and people do speed there all the time. And especially also with the church entrance as it was also a big danger, which I also wrote to the board here years ago about the water issue where the ice came in and people would slide into Lapeer Road making a right turn. It's just not, it has never been okay. Never since we've lived there. It should have never been approved with a neighborhood our size and with children going to school that should be a bus stop, and there's no way that a bus could go in there. So I definitely agree with my father-in-law that we do need, which we've been asking for, a sidewalk and lighting so that a bus can go in there and that it's safe for children to walk from the bus stop and to the bus stop safely.
Not a good public speaker, even amongst this small group. My name is Brian. I own the apartment complex over there, Manitou Lake Apartments. When you said 3 minutes, it was shocking to me because this just seemed like a no-brainer to me. Appreciate all the work that this gentleman does to the roads. We plow the roads currently. It's really just a big mess. It's dangerous every time I pull in and out of there. There's always drain issues. As far as the communication amongst ourselves, the church and the subdivision, there's just so much gray area. Nobody really has the funding to put together, the improvements that need to be done. And for somebody to step up and say they want to do that, it's just impressive to me. We support them 100%. And I just wanted to show that, again, not a good public speaker, but we're all here for him. We're excited for him. So
thank you.
Know that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Curry. I'm the president of the Manitou, the Subdivision Homeowners Association. Everything everyone said so far is very true. That the road is in pretty bad shape. We've had discussions in the past, and they just kind of seem to die off because of poor, old maintenance agreements and easement agreements. So I think we all have an agreement verbally to do something about that. I have talked to David 7 times over the past 3 days. So I have a good feeling so far that he wants to work with us. But to our residents, we don't have anything in writing. So it's it makes us a little uneasy. The bus stop is a problem. Drainage is a problem. I think a lot of that's going to be fixed with what they're proposing. So that's good. I don't think, I think this is a positive thing that they're coming in, but if we can, and we don't want to see it delayed. We don't want to see this project delayed. We'd like to see it move forward, but we would like to also see a modified maintenance agreement, something more solid, and I think David's going to speak on that a little bit. So we're in favor of the project. I think it'll be great. I'm already talking to Brian about finishing the rest of the road, because I don't know if you noticed the road stops. There's probably about another third left to get into our subdivision and the apartments. And there's a dirt road from Manitou Lane there too. So yeah, we think it's a good project, but there's still some things that need to be ironed out to complete it. And I think we can get there though. So Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Robert Wick, and I'm the treasurer of the Orient Oxford Seventh-day Adventist Church. And we're very aware of the problems that Manitou Lane has had for years. I'm also a resident, not in the subdivision, but behind the property that is being discussed. And it's been a huge problem. And so I'm not in official capacity to commit the church, but in concept, we are in favor of this project, providing that there is an equitable plan developed on the maintenance. Because we're a small church, we mainly meet on Saturday mornings. We do have prayer meeting midweek, and we have occasional small meetings, so we're not a heavy traffic party on this, and so we would have to have something that would be manageable for us financially. But we had two concerns, and I had a rather lengthy phone conversation this afternoon with David, and those issues have been cleared up. One of our concerns was that the easement modification would be to the south rather than to the north. And we were concerned that it might have some implication on our parking lot, and I've been assured that it won't. So that's an issue that's a non-issue now. So the only remaining thing would be getting together as a group, or however that process will work, and coming up with some sort of fair, equitable plan for maintenance. But overall, it's a good thing for our church too. And I'm sure we'll be cooperative. We want to be good neighbors. We've always tried to be good neighbors. We've helped buy quite a bit of the blacktop material that has been in there through the years. And so basically, I guess I would say that we want to cooperate and be a part of this process.
Hello, my name's Keith Ferguson. I live at 545 Manitou Lane, back in the association with Greisers and other gentlemen that were speaking. I also happen to be the property owner that's David Fulkerson and his team are looking to purchase to be able to make this project happen. From my standpoint, I see this very favorably. All my dealings with David have been very good to date. We've had many conversations. We've talked about in the past how we've had challenges with the road and issues with the way the current entrance is to the old church and the road itself. And from the plans he's shown me, and he has much more detail here, this looks much better than what we have in today's setup for drainage. That should have taken care of the icing issue that we have coming on to 24, plus actually getting the whole front end of the road being a real road with curbs and lighting, from what he's described, would be very positive. I would also add that I think in part of this, getting the agreement for maintenance of the road would be an important part going forward. And as a member of the association in the back, I'm very much in support of this as well.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in the public about the special land use? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to get a motion to close.
I'll make a motion to close the public
I'll second.
hearing.
It's been moved by Mr. Berger, seconded by Mr. Knoll. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. The public portion of the hearing on the special land use is closed. Now we'll take comments from our commissioners, any correspondence that we've received, and our planner and engineer. Mr. Sharp, do you have anything?
For the special land use.
Regarding the special land use?
The special land use.
I do not.
Okay. To our planner, on the special land use, do you have any comments?
Yes. I'll just briefly summarize what is what I wrote in my review. We did find that the special land use fills an identified need for additional senior housing within the township, that the site improvement will not impact the wetland that is located on the western portion of the parcel or the natural features of the parcel, and the proposed use will not pose an unreasonable impact on the natural environment. And we also found that the proposed use is consistent with the goals and objectives in the future land use plan for the township.
Okay, commissioners. Jack?
I heard a
Anything?
lot of concerns moving forward, but I think a lot of those we're going to be reviewing in the site plan, but
Yes.
as far as the special land use goes, I'm in favor of it.
Mr. Nolt?
The Lake Orion community, what was their stipulation on the special land use?
Their special land use hasn't gone to the planning commission yet. They've been approved for conditional rezoning. They're just,
Right.
they're just in receipt of the plan, of our review. Also, we're the planners on that review as well, and they're receiving that in the next couple of days.
They haven't gone through special land use yet.
Right.
Okay. They rezoned it.
I will say that they were
Right.
conditionally, they approved
That's what I
the
meant.
conditional rezoning, right, which is actually, the conditions put forth by the applicant were fairly stringent, that this is basically the only use that can be used on this land as rezoned to OP, which would make it a special use in the OP district, because it's currently zoned R1 in Orion. So if they do not make this development, it will revert to R1.
And as far as Oxford's concerned, we don't have that issue?
Don't,
Okay.
no.
I don't know.
It's a special use in R2.
Mr. Berger?
I'm not opposed to the use of the property in this manner. I do have concerns, and I've listened to some of the concerns that were brought up tonight, and it makes me wonder, if there was ever a road maintenance agreement, and why not? We built a subdivision back there at one point, so there should have been something in place from the past, but maybe I don't know much about that right now. And I know we have a need in the community for this. So I mean, as far as the special land use portion of it goes, I'm okay.
Mr. Onwick?
Yeah, I'm good with, especially since there hasn't been really any opposition to it from the residents in the area, so.
Ms. Rosler?
Just trying to pull up the report you had sent earlier. What's the overall density of this?
What is it, 63?
Yeah, 63 units,
No.
but not,
Not
that's
on the
not what that's not what she's
Yeah,
asking
just the
for.
density, what's the density per acre?
Oh, for,
on it?
14.
For R1?
Yeah.
I don't have that off the top of my head.
They're only proposing 14 units in the Oxford portion.
Right. Is that what it is?
14 units.
14 units are going in the Oxford property.
16 units.
16.
Thank you.
60 units?
16 units.
16. I heard 60, 16.
16.
16 in Oxford.
I thought it was 14.
And
Let me look real quick.
acreage is, it's a small print.
4 acres. Keep it a little over 4 acres.
It's 4 acres on the Oxford side, 4 acres.
The Oxford side is 4.45. 4.5.
4.5 acres.
That's what I read.
64 units.
16.
16 units
Times 4.
in the 4.4 acres.
Yeah, okay. All right, just, I know we had kind of worked on the new density, so it's fitting within what we would consider for that area. Yeah, overall, I don't have a problem with it. I know there's other issues to work out, but I think that can be worked out.
Those are related, probably a site plan or something else.
Right, yeah, site.
Not use, okay.
And just overall.
Okay. Very good.
I move to approve the special land use for the convalescent nursing home, subject to Article 4 of the ordinance 67A for parcel number P04-35-300-015.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Mr. Curtis, second by Mr. Nold. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This
Those-
roll call?
Roll call.
Oh, roll call. What do you?
Yep, special land use roll call.
Commissioner Berger?
Yes.
Commissioner Curtis?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunwick, yes. Commissioner Nold?
Yes.
Commissioner Rosner Myers?
Yes.
Commissioner Young?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, so the special land use is passed. Let's move on to item 9, which we actually have no unfinished business, which brings us to item 10, new business, the preliminary and final site plan for Grace Premier Senior Living. So I think we've seen the presentation, unless there's anything else that you want to add to it for the preliminary and final site plan?
Yeah, there's a few things, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add. The information that I gave you, there's a colored landscape plan. There is another document, it's a black and white document, that's the site plan with a red line depicting on that site plan. What that line represents is what we're proposing to be the new easement line, which is 60 feet. There's a shaded line underneath it. You'll see it's 66 feet. That's the existing easement width. So we're proposing to reduce that by 6 feet. Now, we will need to get a variance for setback because the way the variance, where the setback works for that building, we have to be 75 feet from the easement line. So we're going to be looking for, and we're going to have to shrink up that connector, that 22-foot connector will get reduced by a foot. So we're going to be asking for a variance of almost 74 and change for a setback. Right now, that property from north to south in that area is 125 feet in depth. If we take 60 feet away from it, you got 65. 75-foot setback, you couldn't build on the property. So we think we have a pretty good case to go in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals. So that'll be resolved by them, of course. This is a single-story building. We did provide you colored renderings. You folks have color rendering in your packet. Well, again, one-story building, architectural shingles, very residential in style, residential windows. A mixture of stone and brick is the facade of the building. 58,601 square feet in area and 63 units. I know there's some comments that will come up from your planner related specifically to the site plan. I know the big issue is associated with the easement, and I'll let David talk of that and what the resolution to that is. The site plan issues, I think we can resolve. So I'll have David come and talk about the easement.
So, this easement has been a disaster over the years. It started in 1971, and the final easement was June of 1999, and there were 2 court judgments involved in the middle as well. So this has been an issue for a very long time. Our excellent attorney has sorted it out, and the homeowners association and us as the purchaser of Mr. Ferguson's land have to agree to move the easement 6 feet. Those were the 2 signers of the easement when it was established at 66 feet. So Mr. Curry is the president of the homeowners association. He spoke tonight, and he and I have been in lengthy discussions about this, and he wants to meet all the homeowners' needs for the road before he signs that easement agreement. And we're going to fix 575 feet of that road. We're going to widen it, add a curb, fix the draining issues, and it's going to be 95 feet, the easement at M24. Hopefully that will provide some parking for school bus drop-off and pickup, because it'll be 95 feet here, and it shrinks down to 60 feet. The drainage issue will be gone. The last main issue we have to resolve is the maintenance of the road. And we had lengthy discussions with the church, the apartments, the gentleman here that came to meet with us and the homeowners. And we conditionally formed an amendment to the easement and maintenance agreement. Unfortunately, the gentleman representing the church don't have authorization to sign it, but we fully intend to help pay for maintenance, even though we don't have to, but we will pay our share for sure to resolve that issue. We want that road to be nice as much as anybody. We'll have a lot of seniors visiting seniors there, so it needs to be well-maintained, and it needs to have salt on it and plowed, so it'll be professionally plowed and salted and maintained. So we fully intend to meet all the requirements, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, well, we do have a number of things that were brought up by the planner, and I'm sure the commissioners have some questions. Why don't we get to some of those questions and comments now?
Sure, I'll start. We've been meeting at the township level for the last couple months with the applicant, not from a planning standpoint, but from working out all the details with Chief Pete and the chief from Orion as far as firefighting, ambulatory services. We've got an interlocal agreement right now with the attorneys written up by Dan Kelly from Orion and being reviewed by Rentrop from Oxford for this interlocal agreement of services for water service, sanitary service, fire. We're going to have the Oakland County Sheriffs have been involved. So with this property being divided into townships, this is a perfect one-stop example of how two communities are working together to bring a premier convalescent nursing service to the communities. Yes, it's on a piece of property in two townships, but the amount of work that we've put into this to get them here through the planning stages, before the planning stages, just to cover all our bases, has really gone well. Like I say, the agreement is almost done. Engineer Sharp's been involved in all the conversations as far as where the water's going. In conjunction with the Water and Sewer Committee, Grace is paying their 16 water taps, and they're going to hook up to Orion Water. So what our Water and Sewer Committee is going to do, based on some pressure issues we have in that area, we're going to propose, and we're working on right now with authorized funds to develop the water main loop connection between M24 and Manitou Lane. So all of these things that are taking place with this development have been very positive in the two communities, and we're going to do the one-stop dog and pony show, if you will, to show how we work together to get these things done before, not later on. So everything has worked out rather well, and I don't want to put words in Chief's mouth. He's given his review, or Engineer Sharp, but this is working. As you can see, David's working with the homeowners association. I live in a homeowners association that doesn't have a road maintenance agreement. It was developed back in 1969. We have the same issue. We have people that don't pay, but we've asphalted our road since then, and we have a maintenance agreement every fall. Our meeting is September 6th. We're going to pay so much to have our road plowed. This is what they did back in the 60s and 70s for these old road agreements. And you can hear the homeowners association president, he's been involved in talking with this developer. So all in all, working through some of the issues on these consultants' letters is going to be easy with all the preliminary work that's been done. Thank you, David.
All right, let's move to Mr. Sharp. Anything from engineering perspective?
Yeah, you should have our letter dated August 9th, and I'm just gonna kind of hit the high points of everything. I mean, in general, the plans referring to the grading, we have no issues there at this time. They'll have to come forward with more detailed engineering, which they may run concurrently if they choose. The sanitary sewer, they're proposing to connect the 16 units that are in Oxford Township to the Oxford Township sewer system. As Mr. Curtis said, with regards to the water, there was, I don't know if there's been a formal agreement or anything, but they have said that they would pay Oxford Township for their water tap fees, even though they are connecting to the Orion Township water system, and all the usage would be coming from them, from Orion Township, that is. Oxford Township is in the process of designing an 8-inch water line that goes from the east side of M24 down Manitou Lane and connects into the settlement of Manitou. Right now, their water main currently stubs down there, so we want to loop that system in there. So along with all the other, let's say, roadway and maintenance agreements, we would be needing a water main easement potentially from the people with that have the rights of that roadway. So we would certainly need to discuss that with the developers as well to secure that easement. I'll let the chief talk about the fire department issues and the hydrants and so forth. The stormwater runoff, at this point, they're going to be collecting it, underground piping. They got a couple of ponds on the site. Everything looks like it's in compliance. The biggest issue, I guess, right now is the roadway. Currently, there's a 66-foot easement on there, and the building, as shown, is encroaching into that easement by 1.97 feet, Jim, or so, somewhere in there. So they're proposing to reduce this easement from 66 feet to 60 feet. I guess one question that I would have is, they talked about their attorney doing, a good job in the research and so forth as to who can execute that. I would think that you would want your township attorney to potentially take a look at that as well, because I don't know if it's just two owners. There's a private roadway that one of the gentlemen lives down here. I believe it was Mr. Wick, right?
That's correct.
I don't know if they have rights to that roadway. These are, I believe, about 6 homes or so that are in Orion Township. So I don't know if they need to be on board. Obviously, the settlement of Manitou, you've got the apartments, and you've got the church on the north side. So I don't know the legalities of all that. Again, this easement has been cycling around for many years, and I don't know exactly who has the rights, who needs to sign off on that. I don't know if just the two entities can go from 66 to 60 or not. Another question I would have is, in lieu of that, why don't we just shorten the corridor between the two buildings by 2 feet and then pull that back, and therefore they're not even in the right-of-way itself? And that may be a design issue, it may be something with the codes for building separation, I'm not quite sure. But if they could reduce that corridor or shrink the building by 2 feet, then they don't even need to goof with all the roadway easement itself. So anyway, I mentioned the township attorney and the maintenance agreement. I understand that road is in very bad shape. As part of our water main project, we're probably going to be going down a portion of that roadway, and the township will be responsible for replacing a portion of that roadway as well. So, again, we need to work with the developer to do all of that. Let's see what else we had. They talked about removing and reconstructing 575 feet of Manitou Lane. Looks like it's got curb and gutter on it. It's going to be a drastic improvement from what it is right now. Again, they're showing some parking and some detention that are in the 66-foot easement. Again, that needs to get cleared up, but I think that they can make that work. The safety path is shown across the front edge. There's a couple minor things with regards to cross sections. But really, I mean, I think that they can certainly make the site plan work. They can make the engineering work for the site. Our primary concern at this point is the roadway, the easement that we have going on in there. And manipulating it or, making sure that the right people sign off on it. Okay?
Okay. And Carlo? Should we go over some of your points? Yes?
Yes. So I'll just go over a couple of our concerns, I suppose, as well. And I know that Jim responded to some of them, but I'm sure he'd like to share all that information with the Planning Commission as well after I go through these. I want to echo what Jim Sharp said as well, that our main concern here is the setback and the easement. That's really the biggest hurdle to begin with, that it is listed as a 66-foot easement for the private road, and that the setback, the nursing and convalescent, I think that's the wrong term for it, convalescent and nursing home is subject to special conditions in the zoning ordinance, section 5.14, and in those special conditions, there's an additional 75-foot or extended 75-foot setback. The use is also required to be accessed from a county road, and I will mention that requirement is also in the city of Orion, or in the township of Orion, excuse me, so that is a concern. But let me just run through these really quick. So, as I said, the proper easement setback and required setback, and the plans that we see the new plans today do have that adjusted on it. And so, like Jim Sharp said, I'm, depending on how that will be adjusted is critical, of course, to how large the variance is needed for this. But there is a dimensional variance needed to build within that 75-foot setback. Additionally, there is a variance required for the relocation of access to the site, and that's that second part of section 5.14 regarding direct access to the site from a county road or a main road. And so that will also require variance to comply with the regulation of this as well. In addition to that, we recommend that approval of the landowners having the shared interest, like Jim Sharp said, whether it's the 6 additional owners that are down at the end in Orion Township of Manitou Lane, as well as the 4, including the developers that are at the north of it, that we need to discover, and it needs to be agreed upon as well. And we defer, of course, to the chief for his comments regarding access and circulation as well. I will say, regarding the parking and loading, I was unclear at the time of this review as to how many parking spaces would be necessary. They do come in over what is required by our ordinance, as well as what is required by the Orion ordinance. And they have 3 spaces to spare for Orion, and according to our regulation, they have possibly a couple dozen to spare for what we require in this for this special use. So that should be mentioned. I do want to say, however, that the individual spaces that we found on the site plans are deficient. They're actually too short and too narrow. However, they are in compliance with Orion Township's ordinance. So they're short and narrow, but not to an extent that is unreasonable. In addition to that, the Planning Commission can allow that reduction if so desired. Other than that, I found along the letter of the law, a landscaping deficiency according to the Oxford ordinance. However, according to the Orion ordinance, they are not deficient. Orion says that they need to have deciduous and ornamental trees, and they don't differentiate which number of each they need to have, and so therefore they come in as compliant with that ordinance, although there are a few short in ours. Then the only other thing that I have here is the safety path. I thought there was a portion on the site plan where they plan to pay in lieu of the safety path. But Jim Butler has confirmed since then that that's really only the bottom portion, and it does say that on the site plans that we received today, that they will be constructing the safety path up until where the Orion Township sign is. So there will be a portion of it that I believe may require a pay in lieu, but that will be in Orion Township. And then our only other concern is that we have no sign details attached to this development, which would be required before final site plan. That's it.
Okay. Commissioners? Mr. Curtis?
One follow-up to my previous was the safety path. I didn't mention that. If the applicant wants to put it in, they can. We spoke, the Safety Path Committee, while there's a safety path on the east side of M24, the applicant would put this path in on the west side of 24. Orion has no intention of putting the path to connect their path, and we don't know if we would ever get our path on the west side. It's a terrible street to cross, but I don't think these individuals are going to be going across 24, nor will anybody utilize the path to get there. So our Safety Path Committee would take pay in lieu of if they elected not to put it in. If they elect to put it in, they could put it in.
Okay. Open it up to the other commissioners, questions, comments?
I just wanted some clarification from our planner. We, as a board here, can overwrite the requirement for the parking spaces? They don't have to go in front of the ZBA for that?
I was going to ask that, too.
Planning commissioners can.
Yeah, I believe that you can waive it.
What's that based on?
On the ordinance, I can find the section for you.
Please.
Let me look it up just a moment.
Can we interrupt, or do you want to wait?
No, I'll interrupt, we'll come back to it.
Yeah, come back.
Well, I do want to have a follow-up to that.
Oh, you have a
Okay.
follow-up, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Our bad, no, go ahead.
The majority of the property, if I remember, is in Orion, correct?
Lion's share,
Yeah.
2/3.
Isn't this a complicated situation? Wouldn't we adopt one community's ordinances for this versus trying to incorporate two?
You would think.
Let me make a comment before I look this up really quick. I will say I missed something on my own review when it is the loading spaces, and that's part of the, part of an issue here is that, yeah, the loading, the Oxford ordinance requires 2 loading spaces for this use. The Orion ordinance requires 1. Because this is considered really one site, it's not going to be considered 2 sites anymore when this is built, and when it's in the development phase. 2 would umbrella the whole site. You could require that as the planning commission. Like I said, Orion requires 1. So if you found it necessary that they needed to, and that they needed to adhere to that regulation, you certainly could, because it is in the ordinance. With that, this, even though it's 2 separate sites and 2 townships, it really is one site when it's built and when it goes into development. And so therefore, whether there's leniency that you would prefer to give or leniency that Orion prefers to give, there are certain ways that you can do that, landscape standards, parking dimensions. Those are allowances you can make.
Anything else?
No.
My question, well, besides, asking on what authority we can grant a variance, because I didn't think we could on certain things, this isn't a PUD, but the number of parking spots, I know that the way it was calculated, it's based on doctors and one for every 2 staff, but it looks like a pretty large facility. Is there enough parking spaces for visitors on something like this? I mean, I've been to other homes, and parking is always an issue at those places.
Is it? I would say from the requirements put by both Oxford's ordinance and Orion's ordinance, it appears as though there is enough parking provided because they meet both of those ordinances.
Well, it's based on, what, 1 per every 2 staff, and then...
1 per every 4 beds for Oxford, and 1 per doctor.
Okay, I was looking at the chart. I didn't see 1 per every 4 beds on the chart. Maybe that's what I missed, because all I saw was 1 per every 2 staff and 1 per...
1 per, are you looking at my review?
Yeah, okay, 1...
Table
1 per
2?
Okay, 1 per 4 beds.
Plus 1 per each staff
One
doctor,
for each
plus 1
doctor,
per 2
plus-
employees.
And then you didn't know how many employees. Some of
Right.
the information wasn't there.
Total, yeah, and that is the total number of employees, which they gave us the max shift number of employees, which is what Orion requires for the calculation. So their max shift is 20 employees at a time. So for that, it would be 10.
Well,
We
no,
would
okay,
require
it's,
10.
it doesn't say max shift, it's how many
It doesn't,
employees.
correct. For
So
Oxford,
if it
it's
was
total
20
number
per
of
shift,
employees.
then you would need 20, assuming people drive their own cars. Otherwise, you'd have to take the full amount of employees, take it by half.
Well,
That was my
technically, the Oxford ordinance says total number of employees, 1 per 2 employees. So if
Right.
there were 40 employees total, then you would need 20.
Right.
Right.
That's what I'm saying, not
Right.
just per shift, it's per total.
It's per total, right.
Right, because I was concerned if it was per shift, they're going to take up all those spots, times 2. So it was half of that, then there wouldn't be any spots left. I was just concerned there's not enough parking spaces, and I know there's not a lot of the handicap, the parking is a little bit ways. I just know a lot of the people that visit these type of facilities tend to, have the handicap plates and need to be closer, so I just don't know. And that's our ordinance.
Right.
I'm talking, not that they're not complying with it.
The barrier-free is based on the state standard as to what is required. You could, as a planning commission, request more information, and whether that's based on them providing you more information about what like uses require or use in other communities. You could get more information about that, regarding that. But I will say that it, as the ordinance stands, it meets the ordinance.
I go to the Clarkston Pines facility every week, and this is a lot of parking. Not too many visitations there, unless you're having a facility-wide event, I know that. So maybe Christmas celebration or something, but they don't have much parking, and there's always places to park.
It's always, well, I find not the same in the facilities that I've been going to, and maybe they're more popular to be visited.
Maybe.
I don't know. I just know in some of the ones I've been to, you can't find parking. It was just something I was looking at overall. That was my only concern with it.
I have a couple questions, and I don't know who needs to answer. The units that are on the north portion of the building, there's like 16 units there. And what is the main living condition of people that will be in those units? What type of people?
That'll be memory care exclusively, so
That's what I was thinking, the 16 units will be that's your memory care, and then the corridor connects, and so those would be like locking doors there?
Correct.
That corridor connects to that. So that courtyard space that's in between, it's not real clear to me on the plans, I didn't find the dimensions. I know the building is 184 feet long, roughly that portion of it, and then that space that is in there, Jim, between the buildings.
22 feet.
Why is it spread that far?
There's an ordinance, you have to have 20 feet between windows, a state requirement, so it has to be at least 20 feet.
Oh, we're talking about a state requirement.
Correct.
Okay, because I'm a code kind of guy, and so I'm thinking, like, why are we doing this? So you're saying for this type of facility, there's a state guideline you're trying to meet?
20 feet between windows.
Okay, that's why, because I thought somebody brought up a good idea, like why couldn't we narrow that corridor some and then pull that building back and get it further away from the actual driveway, or, well, I call it a driveway, sorry, I drive up there all the time, it looks like a driveway, but I guess we're gonna improve it to a roadway. Okay, you answered that, that's something I couldn't quite get in my head. That does put those units closer to the roadway, or the actual roadway itself than I want. Now, this will sound funny, but when I looked at your documents that I had, on my computer, and then you brought this rendition with you tonight, it shows parking on the north side of the roadway near the church.
Yes.
Who's that parking for?
That is parking for the church, is existing parking.
It's gonna be right at the edge of that roadway.
That's where it is today, and that's where
What's
it'll
the
remain.
length of that parking?
I want to say that's 20 feet deep.
So a pickup truck with an extended cab could be hanging out there maybe.
Potentially, but there are other parking spaces.
There are other parking spaces within the property that the church.
If you go to the east side of the building.
Yeah,
there-
just kind of,
Understand.
I'm thinking of some other, safety concerns that I have with that parking there. Honestly, if it was parallel parked, I'd like it better, but that takes away parking spaces because they don't hang out so far.
Correct.
Now, this will sound awkward, and I think the gentleman that got up in the back was here for the church. Maybe something could be worked out where that parking could be rearranged, I don't know. Or maybe not. They don't want to lose any spaces.
Yeah.
Okay, you've already discussed it.
We have.
Okay, that's part of the plan I didn't really like a whole lot. I think there is enough parking spaces. I've had family members before in facilities in Waltonwood and such, and I've never had trouble parking. So, obviously, and they had a memory care facility with 12 people in it, and that's where my uncle was. I don't have a problem with most of the site. I have a couple other questions. They're probably going to sound silly. There's a main interceptor line of sewer that runs on the west side of M24 there. It's a pretty big line. I think it's about 24 inch.
27.
27, thank you, Jim. Is that safety path going to be on top of that? Is that about where that plant's at, safety path?
One second, Mr. Burke.
Because that thing flows like you can't believe. That's a lot of sewage going through there.
Just worried about the weight of the bicycle.
No, not worried about a bicycle. I just got another thing in mind I want to ask.
The interceptor is inbound of the path.
Inbound.
Inbound, it's in our property.
Oh, it's actually on the property near the detention basin possibly.
Yep.
Okay, so if they had to do anything with that, they would dig up that detention basin temporarily and have to repair it.
Correct.
Okay, well, you answered that question too. I am a little concerned that we have to grant many variances for the site to make it happen. I mean, I don't know, variances don't always get granted. I suppose, and this will sound bad maybe, because I know a lot of things work with the number of units, with the investment portion and such. If there was ever a point that you had to reduce any units, would that make this thing go away? Are we tight? I mean, I have to ask this question. I know it's kind of awkward, but.
It's a great question. So the memory care portion was actually on the Orion site.
Yeah.
And it just didn't fit because this property was granted the M24 easement, so the property lost an acre. So it wasn't long enough. We thought it would fit in the building because of the size that we were quoted it was, but it's not that big because of the M24 runs through the front acre of the property.
You're talking about the right-of-way?
The right-of-way.
Yeah, okay.
So
it comes right into your property.
It does, right through it. So we had to move the memory care portion on the other side and shrink the building. Originally, memory care was 14. We had to go to 16 because of business case concerns, because this is an expensive lot. The retaining walls, the amount of work that has to be done, it barely works as it is, to be honest with you.
Okay, I needed to ask that because we're depending on some things to happen to make this work, so, and I'm not opposed. to the development. I mean, thoroughly, I feel like we have needs with, I was a little overlogged at first with all the documentation you had on the number of different facilities and the baby boomers and all the different, I read them all, but that got a little bit crazy for a while. So, all right, I'll wait and see what any other commissioners may have concerns with.
May I?
I mean, in case I have to come back.
Comment really quick. So it's based on section 8.7D. The planning commission, in their discretion, may allow the required parking space length to be reduced up to 2 feet where vehicles are able to overhang curbs or wheel blocks without impacting adjacent landscaped areas, or reducing adjacent sidewalks to a width of less than 5 feet.
So that's through the planning commission.
Dimensional. Pardon?
8.5D?
8.7D.
Chief, you have anything to add outside of your report? Entry, exit, access?
No, I've been in contact with Fire Marshal from Orion, Chief Fire Marshal Williams, and I have been discussing it back and forth many times back. I know on his report, he's got some concerns with the actual fire hydrant locations and everything about moving them to the other side of the street back and forth. I know he had addressed those. Both of us are going to require a Knox box on the building, so there'll be one for Oxford and one for Orion.
Well,
Our
they would be
keys-
separate?
Yeah, your keys don't interact
They
between
don't
the two of them.
interact, that's right.
So again, if we're going to do both places on it, obviously the fire lane signs, one main thing we also wanted to make sure is on the overhead height clearance of the front portico or whatever you want to call it, to make sure that the ambulance can get underneath it, or if a fire truck happens to pull up in there, that we can get underneath there to bypass that. And a side note, I've talked to Orange Chief and I back and forth, and if it's possible to get the building for training before it gets tore down, we'd greatly appreciate it on both departments, so it would work good, so we'd appreciate it.
Okay, Dolly?
Just making a point, so when I reread that, it says we can reduce the length of the parking spot if the vehicle is able to overhang the spot.
Right, if there's not a wall in front of it, if there's a curb, it's able to overhang.
So we'd have to establish that, but it doesn't say we can reduce the width.
It does not, correct.
Well, then I have another quick question. And I wasn't thinking of that. I was thinking, would it mean that so many could comply for the Orion requirement and so many could comply for the Oxford requirement?
Yes.
Seems like it would just be a variance request with.
Or just a variance request to make it happen?
Reason.
So it'd be a variance request on Oxford's behalf?
I think they would both be reasonable, because they are so far over the Oxford requirement.
They could
I
make
mean,
them a little wider,
They could
if they
make
had to, and not ask for a variance.
23 of them wider.
That they could if they had to, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay, then we would, maybe one less variance. I'm just trying to,
Right.
we have a lot of variances we're looking at.
Right.
But 75-foot variance is kind of a big deal in a way on that setback part for the extension of what it is for the special land use. And that's something they'd have to go after, and hopefully they'd seek and get that. I like the idea that you're gonna, I'm sorry if I'm taking off too.
No.
I like that we're gonna make some road improvements, but along with those road improvements, this will sound, I see road maintenance agreements that are sometimes established and never working within parties that are involved. So like the number of trips, for the residents that live there, approximately 7 trips per day, and then the people that have the church and they only use it like maybe a couple, 2-3 times a week, and then the apartment buildings are there too, with Manitou Lane Apartments, and then this facility. How does that all get worked out? And has that been discussed amongst parties to establish who's going to be responsible for what portion of maintenance?
Yeah, verbally, the apartments, the homeowners association and ourselves have agreed to basically pay a third of all the maintenance. And the church about in the 5 to 7% range, something that would make sense to them. And
Just asking.
Yep. And in terms of enforcement, I was able to talk to my attorney on the way here, and he said to enforce these maintenance agreements, conditions, you have to put a statement in that says, Consciously Your Living, or whoever is going to be responsible party, will maintain Manitou Lane, and then they have the power to charge and lien the below parties for their share of the maintenance. So we can lien their property if they don't pay, and that's how the maintenance of the road stays up to date.
So somebody will be responsible for, or in charge of all this, I guess, per se.
Correct.
All right, maybe it might be your facility, I don't know, but.
It might.
Okay, I mean, sometimes people just get lost in the mix of it all and nobody's charging forward with it.
That's why we got to specifically state who's going to maintain it, and then they have the power to charge and lien.
Is it the flavor of the planning commission that those things should be in place for final approval on something like this? Or, I mean, is this going to be a conditional thing that could be put in place to say, okay, we have it later, and now the site plan could be approved? These are things to me that all kind of have to be pulled together to make this site work.
So I agree. Jack?
So,
As you note in the plan, in your packets, we had no review from the attorney.
Correct.
Because these agreements that they're working on at the last minute came to light after the easement was found, after the building was found on the easement, after Manitou Lane was found, that they had an agreement years and years in the 70s. The church and everybody is all in agreement to something that is not really legally binding as we improve sites. So, talking to Attorney Rentrop, once they get their agreement, a condition of this site plan approval will be their approval of the maintenance agreement to the terms for Oxford Township.
Ally?
But I think there's enough here between the engineer and the planner report and all that this would come back to us. I mean, for me, as a preliminary and final, I think there's just a lot still up in the air. From the variance standpoint, I think, sitting on the zoning board, which I will not be sitting on if you come up, because I only get to sit once, so this is the time I get to speak about it, so that it can go on record. And someone else here is also on that board, so there'll be two people gone for that meeting, so the people stepping in, can read the minutes here and all that, but I don't think that asking, for it to parallel the other communities' zoning things is unreasonable. So, looking at the two and balancing it, I myself wouldn't, from sitting there, wouldn't think it would be unreasonable as long as the other community found that it was in compliance with theirs and that it didn't really overall make a detriment, to the surrounding, neighbors in that site. So, in terms of some of those variances requested, if they're meeting Orions, it would be a reasonable thing for me to say that, to ask that wouldn't be unreasonable. But then again, there's other members of that board that you'll be dealing with at that point, but that's just my feel, from sitting on that board, how I would look at this, because this is unusual. It doesn't apply to surrounding, land use.
Yeah.
On that, in this case, that's one of the few that we actually would get that would say that, so in this case, it would apply. But, overall, looking at this, I think there's enough here of unknowns and not knowing specific numbers that I would want this to come back.
For final?
For preliminary and final, just like we're doing today. I think it needs to be reviewed by the attorney. I think on easements and configurations and working with Orion, things may change. And we'd be right back and looking at all the changes again. And we've gotten burdened and bogged down in the past from substantial changes and trying to track everything. And I don't see that, giving them this at this point is going to give any advantage.
I have a few questions. Is there a de-acceleration lane on 24?
No.
Can someone mark off the 572 feet of that roadway that we're talking about?
Essentially from there, all the way there.
To this line here, okay.
To the middle of the retention pond?
It's not in
There's a line, there's a line.
Retention pond, yeah.
Yes.
The north entrance exit to the memory care, can you tell me what that will be used for?
The north entrance?
An exit,
well,
yeah.
he's got a sidewalk there.
There's a sidewalk. It's an exit, it's an exit door. It's an exit only,
Probably, or
required by code.
And the main is, the main one's on the other side?
At the end.
at the end
Okay.
for employees.
Okay, I'm just concerned with that parking across the street for the church and the amount of traffic that's on the road, and the residents saying that how fast the traffic is moving. Once we pave that, I don't think the traffic will go slower. And the people backing out and using those entrances and exits is a concern.
Well, given the circuitous nature of the drive, it's not going to be a high-speed road. Again, people are going to do what people do, but given the design of it and where that building will be and its proximity, I think people will drive slower.
Yes. That's going to be a problem,
And so, we've talked about the pay in lieu for the safety path, a bit of a landscaping deficiency. Are there any issues with correcting those or changing those?
The issue associated with the pathway, there's a small section on the south end. There is the Welcome to Orion sign that's there.
Yeah.
Because of how that all eventually fits in, we can't go on the adjacent property without benefit of an easement to be able to do something, so we're stopping the pathway there. Again, we're proposing to put it in all the way along the frontage. I believe in Oxford's ordinance related to private roads, the minimum roadway easement is 60 feet, so that's why we're proposing to make this 60 in lieu of 66. The parking that's in Oxford, if we got to make it compliant with a 10 by 20, we'll do that and not seek a variance. I'm not seeing the wisdom of it, but that's just me. Parking's parking, but I understand what you're doing. And again, as we started off, and I think a couple of the commissioners had stated, this is really kind of complex because of all the ordinance requirements back and forth.
Yeah.
The loading, unloading for this building, there is really one only point of loading, unloading. It's on the south end. That's where the kitchen deliveries are made and any deliveries into the building are made. There's really no loading set in Oxford. Actually, your ordinance is rather unique in the regard that it requires what it does. I read a few other ordinance this morning just to see that, and I was surprised that it was like that. Regarding variances, obviously, we've got to seek those. And if you look at this property, it is unique, because if you just take off the Orient piece, you apply the 60 or 66 feet, you apply under the R2 zoning, it's a 30-foot front yard setback, and you apply a 25-foot setback, you have 5 feet you can build. So any development that would go within that area would have to seek some sort of variance somehow, some way. So I don't know what the zoning board of appeals is going to do. And I'm not here as a member. Just for the record.
Yeah, I got
I am
it.
not here as a member of the zoning board of appeals.
Yeah. Made me laugh, though.
I don't see, a lot of these items, yes, well, they might seem a lot, but I think we can handle all those and take care of that. The easement obviously is of a concern, and I get your point, and that does probably need to be reviewed. But the items related to site plan, I think we can take care of with
signage. I think I saw it
signage. We
noted
can
somewhere,
provide a
but I
copy
can't
with
find it
signage.
now.
We really hadn't worked that out, Mr. Young, but we can provide one. I would respectfully request special, or we got special land use, but final preliminary and final site plan approval. If there's conditions on it, we'll take care of those.
I just want to make another comment again, as I
Go ahead.
stated earlier. Yes, aside from the easement and the maintenance agreement for the road that the three parties have to work out, I think the rest of this, in my opinion, should fall on Orion's planning commission if they approve it all. If we get our needs for the easement and for the road maintenance, I don't see why we can't go in that direction. This is just, to me, it's a complicated situation, and most of it's in Orion, and let Orion decide. And then we just agree to adhere to their decision. That's my take.
Anyone else?
I know that the public part is over, but could I still say something? Since the acceleration lane came up, that is an issue that we should have in our neighborhood, especially with new facility coming in.
Okay.
Ms. Young, can I address that?
Yep.
We have been in contact with the Michigan Department of Transportation. They did not require us to do a traffic study. As you know, there is a development improvement plan in place. We did submit our drawings to them for formal approval. Given the generation of traffic that we have, I don't anticipate that we would be required to make any sort of improvement out on Lapeer Road. But it's all up to them at the end of the day.
Are they going to issue a letter or something, Jim?
They will be issuing a permit. We have applied for a permit.
Okay.
Again, I'm sorry I have to interrupt here, and I'm all for your facility. We are all for it. I have myself a 91-year-old father that's in care, so I'm totally for this. But again, the road, living there, I'm a resident, I'm there. My children, I had to drive them every day from kindergarten to now. My daughter drives now, every day because of this issue. This road has been a non-compliant since we moved there. They should have never allowed it the way it is. And even the speed is unbearable. You're coming from 55, 65, 70 miles an hour, and you're driving into our sub. It's already bad enough getting in there. Everybody goes on the shoulder. There should be a de-acceleration zone no matter what. 80% of the people that go into our sub go on because they don't want to get hit from behind. And in the amount of traffic, if you're on Lapeer Road, anytime during rush hour or in the morning, it's pretty tough. And I don't think you know that unless you're living there, what the road conditions are. And now we're going to have more traffic. Could you widen the road by a couple of feet? It's not going to work. And then you still have the issue, there needs to be a sidewalk, for sure, and lighting. And then the front part just being broadened. And also, I'm just looking, I know my neighborhood. I'm thinking about the trucks and even the other vehicles that have to make these turns. It's small. If you, Mr. Berger, you said that you know the area very well, you know the road. And if you're there and see it, it's a completely different situation. And this de-acceleration lane, like I said, we already are using it. That's my concern.
Okay.
Just want to make a comment kind of in regards to what you said.
Yep.
I mean, I feel what you feel, because I've been in and out of there enough. There's a couple things that I looked at, and I have to look at things and digest them sometimes long enough. When my wife and I used to visit another facility, it was during hours of operation that were available for us because we were working people. And I noticed that when I drive down southbound 24 in the evening hours, there's less traffic on the southbound side. It's all going northbound. So I feel better about that. Like if people have to come to visit people here, I know because you're living there, you've been going in and out for years and making your trips as a resident. But I don't know that the hazards are as great for the kind of conditions of what this facility draw. I mean, from my standpoint of view. And in the morning, a lot of times the deliveries that are going to be made there are probably going to be made a lot of times after the peak hours. I guess what I call on 24 going southbound, because 24 southbound in the morning can be a rat race. So I'm kind of looking at what this use does, in my opinion, rather than residential use, and how they enter and come and go off 24 probably aren't as bad as what could possibly be there. And I hate to admit it, because sometimes they just don't get a lot of visitors. Mm-hmm. And I know what you meant. So, but I would love to have a DXL lane, but I don't think that whatever Mr. Butler said earlier, when they apply to MDOT and seek to get a permit, it's MDOT's decision, not ours.
Correct.
So I can't step on that one.
Correct.
And I feel the lady's pain, though.
Can I make a couple comments?
Sure.
So we're going to be adding lighting to the road. We're going to be making dramatic improvements to the road. We're going to be fixing a lot of the issues everybody has. We are widening it at M24, so it's easier to pull in and out of. It's 95 feet wide there. We're doing a lot of the things based on conversations we've had with the residents, so we are trying to do our best. We can't do everything. It's kind of one of those things where it's very difficult financially in the situation we're in. This is a tough business. We've had some tough decisions to make with the Water and Sewer Commission, and we're trying to work things out. And based on timing and where we are in the calendar year. Delays can add to an unfinished building through the winter, that we have to wait until spring, which adds a lot of difficulties. We are requesting approval on conditions we meet the easement requirements, the maintenance for the road requirements, and then obviously the variance that we need from the ZBA on the 10th. Thank you.
Jack?
This road's going to be paved up to the end of their property, correct?
Yeah.
Up to the end.
Yeah, right up to the end of their property.
Yeah, that's what he's
Technically, no.
saying. He's
So,
gonna make the
what?
improvement.
They own
They own a
Yeah.
lot
much
more.
further
So you got
back.
to
Yeah.
pave
They
the
own
whole
beyond.
road all the way to the end, eastern edge of your property,
Well, not quite, but they go further.
then the building site.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's 600 feet of repaired road. We're going to be seeking an easement to go there, tear this water line in through there. That's going to fix a lot of the road too. So, the main problem here is once MDOT gets a hold of this and requires XL, decel lanes, or
Yeah.
even if they let you go in on a private road, that's MDOT, that's not us. That's not Road Commission of Oakland County.
That's right.
Okay, anything else from the commission?
No, but Mr. Chair, I mean, I'm preliminarily, I could move forward, but I don't know if I'd want to do final site plan. You know, I don't know, a lot of conditions, and I just want to, I'd like to see the attorney's letter, I'd like to see some things. I'd like this project to move forward. I mean, I don't have a problem with what I see, and what we could probably seek to get, satisfaction to the concerns that we all have. But I wouldn't be inclined to really go final site plan tonight. I wouldn't, too much for me. I mean, we have a preliminary and we have final. I want these people to know that, yes, we would like to move this forward.
Yep.
And I'd like to, but I don't know that I'd be inclined to say yes to a final site plan tonight. I mean, I hear what they're all saying, but it's a little bit for me to digest all at once, and I'd like to have a little more time myself, so.
Okay.
I want everybody to know what my feelings are.
Jack?
All right, I move to approve the preliminary site plan for Grace Premier Senior Living located at 985 North Lapeer Road, Oxford, Michigan, 48371, subject to the following conditions. All the conditions of the following: Carlisle Wortman letter dated August 10th, 2018. Sharp Engineering letter dated August 9th, 2018. Fire Chief Schultz letter dated August 10th, 2018. Zoning Board of Appeals approval of the reduced setback for the private road easement. Township Attorney to review final road maintenance agreement. MDOT approval of the entrance onto M24 from the site. Parking space length and width to comply with Article 8, Section 7, Point D, Oxford Township. The use of Orion Township recommendations for loading docks, 1 required instead of 2. And that would be the end of motion, unless,
This one,
which one?
a variance for the relocation of the access to the, which is required by Article 5,
The
Section
access.
14, access from a county road.
Oh, well, is that not in MDOT would allow that or not allow that?
No, that's by ordinance.
By ordinance.
That's
Okay, I'll amend my motion to include the waiving of the variance must be ascertained for the ingress and egress from a private road.
County road.
A county, it's not a county road,
It's a
so he's
private
saying it's a private road.
You can't enter and exit off of a private road for an institution.
For a special land use on this property.
Yeah.
And that's the way you're wording it?
Yes.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Knoll. Is there discussion on the motion?
I want clarification on the road access. You're saying it access from a private road?
Yes.
Yes.
Not allowed for institutions.
It's not allowed.
The ordinance says that this
Currently,
use has to access
Right.
a county road.
I was
From a
confused as how he was wording the, all right.
Plus a waiver.
And I want to make, for clarification, this is preliminary.
I said private.
He didn't say
Be a
final.
waiver from the
Jack?
county.
Jack, can you read your first sentence, please?
My first sentence,
Yes.
I move to approve the preliminary site plan approval for Grace Premier Senior Living.
Preliminary.
Okay, we're clear now.
Okay.
Chief has something.
Jack, can you continue reading that sentence, please? With the address?
985 North Lapeer Road,
And you said Oxford,
Oxford,
Michigan?
Michigan.
I believe that's Orion mailing. That's not Oxford mailing, and that 985 North Lapeer is an Orion address. That's not an Oxford address.
I'll amend my motion to say Orion,
Lake Orion.
Lake Orion. What's the zip code there?
48362.
I'll amend my motion.
I'll second the amended motion.
Any other discussion on the motion?
I just think it's, there's a lot up in the air, and a lot can change when Orion looks at it, so I think it's premature.
Just want to move forward.
We'll meet with Orion again.
Okay, seeing none,
Roll call?
have a roll call vote. Mr. Hunwick?
Ms. Rosner Myers?
No.
No? Mr. Berger?
Yes.
Mr. Curtis?
Yes.
Mr. Nold?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunwick says yes reluctantly because I don't think we should be doing this. I think it should be Orion's problem, but yes, just to move it forward.
Well, my vote.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Young.
Yes.
You don't know today.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, so that has passed the preliminary site plan process. To move to item 11, communication or committee reports.
I just wanted to
I'm
thank
sorry.
everybody for the great discussion, great questions. You're very informed, and we're very grateful for the help and everybody's work on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee reports. Acreage lot split. I don't know how that came back on here.
How'd that get back on there? We don't do that right now.
What?
Yeah, somehow that's on there.
Oh, sorry.
No trouble.
That just from an old,
Oh,
Yeah.
you didn't see that. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that, point of order.
Was that a mouthful?
It's on there. We don't have to vote
It's
on
on the
it.
agenda.
oh, it's on the agenda?
I think we have to.
Oh, do we have to bring it up?
I think maybe we should make a motion to
Did you hear what they said?
Yeah, the,
postpone.
We have to postpone that
what?
Final.
final.
Oh,
It's on the agenda
okay.
tonight.
Well, I can make a motion to postpone final site plan approval for Grace Premier Centers, 985 Lake Orion, Michigan,
Yeah.
48362.
I'll second that.
Just for why can we put, to allow the applicant to address the issues of the amended site plan, or of the preliminary site plan?
No, you want the reason why we're postponing?
Yeah, I think we need to put the reason.
I'll amend my motion to include those words, to allow the applicant to address the conditions in preliminary site plan approval.
And I'll second that.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis, and, pardon me, seconded by Mr. Knoll. Any discussion? Seeing none.
I understand.
Those in favor?
This is not-
Those opposed?
This is not roll call?
No.
No?
No, because it's a
No.
Postponement. Okay, so we're postponing the final site plan.
I'm a nay, by the way.
You don't want to postpone?
No.
He's a troublemaker today.
Yeah. There- You could have made a different motion now.
Well, I suppose, but
Okay, moving on to item 11, Economic Development Committee.
Jack?
EDC, no meeting, planning for a meeting in September.
Yes, we are. If everybody's in town, their children are off to school and not at a plant.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that, I mean, I like the option of every once in a while discussing stuff from ZBA because it's really my function to coordinate, and it's not on here as a regular, but I would like to speak on it because it is my role. So I hope I may.
Commissioner comments.
it's not on the agenda.
Put it on next time. I don't have a problem.
Oh,
Supposed to be under
she's talking now.
Start putting it on.
Right.
Commissioner comments.
Right, because
Good spot.
before it was commissioner comments, and I'm really not speaking as commissioner, I'm speaking as like the ZBA.
Yeah, I would do
And
that
it
under
needs to be on there,
Commissioner.
and I think sometimes it's important. I mean, there's things that come up, and we're supposed to kind of report back issues.
I would give that under Commissioner comments, just like you would expect Jack to bring up water and sewer under those two. So,
Okay?
Okay.
Second way?
how about Ordinance Review Committee?
Well, we've had another meeting.
I didn't.
That's good.
And, first, I guess what I'll back it back up, because we're still working with this, mobile food vending and food truck discussion, and we're all over the map. I mean, we've got various, community ordinances that have already been adopted and all different types of things, definitions, and we're really on a slippery slope trying to put something together that we think is going to be beneficial for everyone in the community to make it happen and work properly. But, so on a sidebar, we're going to do further investigation and see if we can get that thing moving. We also looked at the outside dining portion, but apparently, and Mr. Knoll brought this to our attention earlier today, that the Township Board is looking into transient merchants. Yes. And there's an interpretation that's being done by the Township Attorney as to what that really is, and maybe there's going to be a definition concluded from it. So we're kind of waiting to see what the attorney, Mr. Rentrop, might put together for the Township Board before we move too much further in the mobile food business portion of it, because we don't want to be contradictive and put a bunch of effort together for something that somebody's just going to say nay on anyway. So we're going to let that slide a little bit. On the other hand, we have a schedule of uses proposed and ready to schedule a public hearing for the AG agricultural uses and also the single family. So that information will be put together and given to you and the red shows the changes we're making on those, so that everybody will have a chance to look at that and see that from the Planning Commission point of view. We just went through that again today.
You're going to do that before we go to public hearing, though, right? Give
Yeah.
the Commission a chance to review?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, we are ready. On our behalf, we feel that we're ready, and of course, we'll get the opinion from the Planning Commission. We were trying to get back on our original, and it wasn't mine. This was created sometime in the past by the Township Board and other people prior to me coming on board in the Ordinance Review Committee, to a progress of where we're at with things, and we still have outside dining in there. We still have, I hate to admit it, but mobile food vending, food trucks, because it became so popular so quickly, they're kind of moved up on us right now too. And we still have the sign ordinance, and those three things right now are three things that we're in the process with. And we have the other issues that we've completed, and then we still have not started. So sorry, we're trying to move as fast as we can. I guess I'll say it that way. Kelly?
I've said it in the past, garages, and I know we discussed it before, but to put on your list for things.
Detached?
Garages, first of all, like calculation of size versus house. It's something, as a planning commission, I think we need to discuss, because it's come up quite a few times lately. People are wanting bigger garages. And we have the garage tied to the house size. And a lot of courts have they found that not to be a proper way to do it. It should be a set size is allowed, period. It really shouldn't be tied to the house size. It should be reasonable. But also, we had in the last zoning that we had, or the ZBA petition we had on Monday, it was a two-story. And when you read our ordinance, it's silent as to what it's supposed to be. It says it's allowed, don't quote me, I think it's 25 feet. And so this was substantially more than 25 feet. It was multiple story. And so we were making this determination that by whatever, or actually it was substantially less than 25 feet that it's allowed, that they're meaning by that height that it's one story, but it doesn't really say. So it would be a good clarification to point out that a garage is a one-story building of, no more than X height.
You mean detached?
Well,
it can be attached to a house and be two-story. You
Attached to a house and
can have habitable space above it and everything else.
Yeah, space above it or living space above it. So, yeah, in this case, that part applies to the detached.
Well, I wrote garages, sizes, and then I wrote versus the size of the house, and then I wrote detached or attached. So you want...
there's not, and then like measuring grade-wise, when you read the verbal description of how to measure, it's extremely complicated. A diagram would be really nice in that situation.
From average grade plane, you mean?
How you're measuring, because when you have a
Well, the code is very clear on it, though.
when you have a walkout garage, but we as laymen and the people that read the ordinance have to understand it, and read it, just go back tonight and read it.
Well, I understand it very well, but maybe other people don't.
It's really complicated when you read it.
I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, so how do you measure the height of the building?
Well, you have two different averages, one the average roof and you have the average grade.
Right.
So then that's your total building height.
You get the front, which is a certain height, you have the back, that's
Well, it's all the points around the building, 6 feet away from the building.
Right.
That's how you get average grade plane.
Right.
Then you have average roof based on the pitch of the roof.
Right, but it doesn't really specify it anyway.
Well, we can talk about it.
I'm just saying, just things to
Okay.
look at, it's just...
She mentioned size first. She mentioned size.
Yeah, we had to postpone it, but a lot of that, just because we really weren't sure if we really did intend for a garage to be one story.
I think I have a question about that too. I think there is an accessory building maximum height. which
Yeah,
is
the
what that
maximum height
variance
is there,
went for.
but
Right.
does that mean they can chop it in two and make two short stories? Like Hawaii does?
Well, building code would, I guess, determine how, the height of a story, right?
I think it's 14 feet, I know the height is low, it
Well,
would lead you to believe it's one story.
There's total building, we shouldn't get into the mix on that right
No.
now, but, yeah.
I'm just saying, it's just a little clarification in that, it seems to be garages that just need a little bit more work.
Noted. I wrote it down.
I do have a question that I need to ask before because I keep forgetting. I know it's because I see the sign. Did we approve a gateway sign to be erected when they do in 24, in 2020?
Well, we did at one time.
There's even money in the budget held for it.
But do we have we don't have something planned when they tear it down, when they tear the road up?
That's brought up, and they know that it's there. Jim, we talked about it with them at one of their meetings, and that's all it went. We still have the money, we still have design, but as they rebuild them 24, they bring it up and put it in there, it'll be yay for us.
I like the one in the middle of median.
I do too.
Okay. Kyle R. Wortman, anything else?
No, well, yes. Just that the ag schedule of uses and the single-family 1, 2, and 3 schedule of uses have already been given to Deanna to get on the public hearing, to get a public hearing scheduled. So you will receive those in your packet the week before. So, and purpose, of course, is like we missed up the last time, to have the discussion and the public hearing at the same time. We will receive those. Otherwise, nothing.
Mr. Sharp?
Oh, yeah, just for the commission's information and for the masses of people that are probably watching on OCTV, the recent paving project that happened on M24, that is not the final project. It just was determined that that was portion of roadways in such bad shape that they went up and down and they did what they call skip paving, it's supposed to get them 5 more years. But the big project is still scheduled for 2020 at this point.
It was just a taste of what's to come, right?
Yeah, that's just a taste. You got it, Callie.
Village did pass the ordinance to allow them to work late into the night also.
That'll help all the facilities.
That's all I had, Mr. Young.
Okay.
All right. Well, with that takes us to item 13, which is adjournment, which is at 8:46. Thank you.